Adoptions are $25. You will need to go to ascmv.org/adoptions to view the pets that are available there. Animal control is only bringing emergency cases back to the shelter, and the shelter is only accepting sick or injured owner surrendered animals, and they're only taking emergency help appointments from adopted or foster animals. Now today, the temperatures could get warm again. It's a little breezy out there as well, up to 95 degrees, and I saw as hot as 97 on Thursday. A reminder to never leave pets outside for long periods of time, to provide water and shade, to keep them from resting on concrete, groom them regularly, exercise when it's cooler, and provide frozen treats if you can. And the communications office would also like to take the opportunity to let you know what's going on with COVID-19 as far as the parks. Because of COVID-19, city parks have closed, and Parks and Rec has a strategy for reopening. And today, phase 1, some specialty parks are reopening. Lions Park tennis courts and Apodaca pickleball courts were open Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and now Saturdays are added. All 4 of those days will be open from 8 a.m. to noon, and again from 5 to 9 p.m. And today we add Metro Verde tennis court to that schedule. The remote control track and remote control airport locations will operate as normal hours starting today. Phase 2 begins next Monday, June 15th, and that begins with at least 1 park opening in each district. I want to direct you to los-cruces.org and to visit the Parks and Rec Department page, where you'll find more of what's going on in phase 1 and phase 2. And we hope you get outside and start getting back to what I think we can consider starting to be normal as we start to reopen up the parks for the city. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Okay, so we have one item on the agenda, 1.1, which is called the Cinematic Infrastructure Update. And so I believe Dr. Griselda Martinez, from our Director of our Economic Development, is going to lead us off on this. So Dr. Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. Griselda Martinez, Economic Development Director for City of Las Cruces. Before you, I have an important item that we have been working on for a number of years. And as I share my screen here with you all, I'd also like to let you know that we have representatives from Film Las Cruces, as well as New Mexico State University System, Lenny Martinez and Monica Torres. And as I work through the technical elements of this, if you bear. I believe I had done this before. Adrian, would you please guide me on sharing my screen?
So yeah, just the green share button at the very bottom, and then you should be able to select your PowerPoint or your desktop.
Thank you. I found it. All right. So first of all, this was a presentation that was scheduled to be done mid-March, and it was when all this current situation started to evolve, and we canceled this work session. So after we have settled down a little bit, we saw the opportunity to bring this item for discussion before you. So I'm going to be presenting the history, starting with the funding, how the first funds were allocated to this purpose, the work completed by City of Las Cruces staff throughout time, and also the expenditures that we have incurred through the work that we have completed. I'm going to also brief you on the request for proposals that we published in 2018 and 2019, and then options for next steps as staff has evaluated them. Obviously, you have the opportunity to provide further guidance, and we welcome that. So the initial item that triggered the City of Las Cruces being focused on film was a city resolution that was adopted at the end of 2014. Also in 2015, a memorandum of understanding was created with Film Las Cruces, in which we started our yearly commitment to pay for economic development services for film for a total of $95,000 a year. In 2015, we also received state appropriations, 2 different pockets of money from the state, one for $402,000 and the other one for $555,000. And the scope of the work allowed with these two state appropriations were related to plan, design, equip film infrastructure, which still is the scope of work under this. In 2015, the city also allocated from whole homeless GRT funds a total of $3 million. And so that total was what we started as the funding in which we started using funds for the work that I'll present the following. In 2016, originally, the work that was defined to be done was as a part of the expansion of Las Cruces Convention Center. So at the end of 2016, it was defined that this was not necessarily the best course of action given the two different functions of the facilities. And there was a resolution to separate these two items and have the convention center expansion on its own, and then look for a different alternative for the film studio, which let's see, also at the end of 2016, the 2100 South Valley building, which a lot of people know it as the Coca-Cola building, became as an option for acquisition. And in December, there was a commitment from the city of Las Cruces that was put as earnest funds towards the acquisition of this building, and the total was of $5,000 at that point. Also from City Council in January of 2019, there was a support of out-of-zone tax credit that was passed at the state, and so that approved additional credits for rural areas. And in September of 2019, there was a transition from the Memorandum of Understanding with Film Las Cruces to a performance contract with Film Las Cruces, and we continue our commitment of the original amount per year. So this is just a summary of the work that we have done, and a lot of this work was done initially to evaluate the options of a new building, which was the work done in March of 2016. At that point, locations were assessed for a film studio, and this assessment included the option for the West Mesa Industrial Park. Then the work that was done following that focused on the options for an existing building, which was 2100 South Valley. And so the items that you see listed, I'm not going to go into a lot of details because they're lengthy studies. However, I want to highlight that during the 2017 studies, when we received the building condition assessment, the environmental assessment, as well as the evaluation of sound and vibration, the decision was made to not move forward into the acquisition of 21 South Valley building. And with that, staff started looking for additional options, in which at that point, we saw as an opportunity to engage private industry. And we defined that opportunity, and with the knowledge of the key elements for success for a film studio facility, assuming that it was a new building, we put out an RFP that called for investment, management, and operations for a film facility. And so we published it the first time at mid-year in 2018, and then we republished in August. And in both instances, we received one response, and it was the same response in both instances. So we continue with our selection process as defined in our procurement code, and we initiated negotiations with the respondent in November of 2018. We came back to City Council in December of 2018, and we continued negotiations until January. Unfortunately, during this year, we staff weren't able to reach a contract with the respondent due to the one of the requirements being management and operations as a key component to success, and with the experience to be linked to the film industry. And so the respondent was not able to provide that last component. They were able to provide the funding for the investment and the expertise in development, but we closed that as not yielding a contract. So at that point, we started looking for alternative options, and in the last 6 months, we have done a number of things. We reached out to New Mexico Economic Development Cabinet Secretary Alicia Keys, and we have discussed with her the option to for the Economic Development Department and the New Mexico Film Office to help us attract a producer and that would serve as an anchor tenant, and then that we could explore LIDA funding as an opportunity to attract those industry partners, and somewhat mirroring what has happened in Albuquerque. At some point during the conversation with Secretary Keys, we were asked to provide some materials that we could utilize for recruitment, and we have provided a flyer with the opportunity from the city that captures the information that I'm presenting to you. Also, during the process that we were following in the city, New Mexico Doña Ana Community College, they went through a bond process and they committed $3.9 million for a new building for their creative media technology. And Dr. Monica Torres can speak in further detail about that. And also, we participated in a meeting with stakeholders that was hosted by NMSU's Creative Media Institute, as well as Filmless Cruises and Representative Xochitl Torres Mol. As part of the conversations to look for opportunities for us to expand partnerships with New Mexico State University, there was the concept of a creative campus explored, and a charrette took place, and we had over, I would say, 50 participants with a number of different people from the community, including Filmless Cruises, New Mexico State, Doña Ana Community College, staff from the city, as well as people in industry such as Ganymede and others who may have been interested in expanding on this concept, but also providing their input on what this could be. Digital media at that point was defined as digital film production, visual effects, gaming production, and other elements in addition to film production. So right now, given the expenses that we incurred that I presented before you, the funding available is 3.844. And I want to note that between March and now, the state appropriation funds have been, we have been asked to freeze any expenditures that have not been encumbered on the state appropriations until after the resolution during the special session coming up in June. So the options that we're bringing to you are, this presentation was capturing the work that we did up to maybe during the same type of the charrette. And I believe that both Filmless Cruises and NMSU system have additional thoughts on what they think would be a good idea for us to utilize these funds and continue to expand this cluster. So option one is for us to acquire and retrofit 21 South Valley. Currently, this building is leased by Doña Ana Community College and managed by Filmless Cruises. This could lead to a long-term production commitment from a private entity, in which case LIDA funds would be able to be evaluated as an opportunity to incentivize. And the same for, I'm sorry, I'll give you the details in a moment. The option two, it was based on the idea of a film production that would be co-located with the creative media and the creative media technology new buildings that New Mexico State University what is considering. And this would require an outside entity to invest, manage, and operate. So this would require basically what we attempted to do through the RFP, and also expand through the working relationship with the New Mexico Film Office. This would also potentially be an eligible project for LIDA if we were to have this long-term production commitment. With the two options, we have the funding attached to options 1 and 2. So if we are to go with option 1 and 2, and considering the current funding and the retrofits required for 2100 South Valley, we calculated from the studies that gave us estimates in 2017, we calculated an estimated cost of 2.187, and that in addition to the acquisition cost, which in 2017 was 1.85. Currently, the price of 2100 South Valley has dropped to 1.25. And so that would, those would be the two major expenses for acquisition and retrofitting. One item that we would need to consider here is the cost for management and operation. For the film studio co-locating at NMSU, the estimated cost of that is about $14 million. And so with the current funding that we have, the financial gap would be about $8 million. With that, I'd like to introduce Don Gray, the director for Film Las Cruces, and he can expand on the options that they see as beneficial for our community related to the work that Film Las Cruces is doing.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Martinez.
I will stop sharing my screen.
Okay. Can y'all see and hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I just need you to identify yourself when you speak.
My name is Don Gray, and I'm the new director of Film Las Cruces. And I'm going to try to share my presentation on the screen, which I have never tried before.
Okay.
Okay, let's see if we can do it. Okay, you can see, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, hi everybody. Well, I'm new here, so just start by saying that I've been with Film Las Cruces for a couple of months now. My background is that I've worked in the New Mexico film industry for almost 20 years now. I started in the industry as a location manager, and I spent 14 years at the New Mexico State Film Office. So I have a lot of folks that I know in the industry. I've done a lot of business in the industry, a lot of connections that I could have conversations with. And as we sort of work through the ideas of what you guys have as an approach to the projects you have going on, I thought it would be really useful for you to hear from me the conversations that I hear that are happening in the industry. The film, I just want to start by saying I think that the film and media industries are probably going to come back soon and probably stronger than other sectors, economic development sectors. And I base that on a couple of things. First of all, you know, the industry is incredibly scalable at all levels of production. They can move and adapt in ways that bigger industries that are actually just as large can't necessarily do, because there are big productions, little productions, in between productions, and studios are actually used to working on productions of all scales. They have tremendous resources to produce. The film and television industry is an industry that has cash reserves and are able to bring those reserves forward to produce productions. And the other thing that's amazing about where we stand right now in the industry is that demand is very high for content. I'm sure everybody has watched all the episodes of Stranger Things that they wanted to watch. They've watched all of the projects that they wanted to watch and the television shows and movies. And now we all want to see more is really what it comes down to. You know, the film and television industry is fairly recession and depression proof. Even during the Great Depression in the 30s, movie theaters did quite well as people wanted to escape the realities of the day. So I think that that's some of the things that we're going to see happening is that they will start producing because the demand is very high. The pandemic itself certainly has created some really interesting market forces that didn't exist pre-pandemic. And those forces are interesting in that I think the result of those market forces puts Las Cruces particularly in a very interesting position that I don't think it has been in prior, and to our advantage in some ways. And I'll explain what I mean by that. The first thing I want to say that is that studios schedule out their productions and production companies schedule out their productions years in advance. And so a couple of things are going to happen once production comes back online, once the agreements about how to create productions happen. A couple of things are going to happen. One is they're going to have to restart the productions that were already underway when the shutdown occurred. You know, sure, some of those productions may be canceled, but most of them actually will probably happen because they're going to have to proceed in order that they can recoup what have already been invested in productions that were underway when the shutdown occurred. But just so you know, that's an interesting thing that happens is, well, you might think on the surface of that, that means that studios and production companies will simply slide forward their production schedules. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't really work that way, because if you've contracted Tom Hanks to be in your movie and it's going to start in the fall, you can't shove Tom Hanks into the winter because he won't be available because he's already scheduled to do something else. And you certainly don't want to lose Tom Hanks if you have him, because he's a big moneymaker and a big draw. So instead, what's going to happen is they're going to try to meet the demand for productions that were already underway that they're going to bring back online, and productions that were in the schedule at the same time. Again, this is going to create a huge amount of opportunity in the industry. Another very interesting thing that I see happening is a lot of discussions going on in the industry right now about how they can restart. And the industry is certainly an interesting incubator, no pun intended, but you know, productions typically are large with a lot of people that spend a lot of close time together in order to produce a production. So there are a lot of discussions going on about how to do that. And of course, one of the sticking points is that they have to be able to demonstrate that they can mitigate risk, particularly for the insurance and bond companies. And so one of the conversations, at least what will come back online sooner rather than later, and what we will probably see emphasized in the next 12 to 24 months, are smaller productions or productions that are looking to create contained environments in which to shoot. So one example that was given to me by a producer is that everybody right now is looking for a small, great script of a horror picture that all takes place in one spooky house somewhere, because that's a contained environment for a production, rather than having to clean and prep 10 to 20 locations. You can just do one, and you can clean that on a daily basis. It's a controlled environment, and they're even talking about controlling where the crews can go after the day's work is done. So they're talking about actually renting out entire floors of hotels, or maybe an entire property of a hotel, so that they can control that environment and demonstrate that the risk can be mitigated for insurance companies and for bond companies as well. There's a desire also in the industry to eliminate travel. Particularly for talent. Talent is the part of this equation that is the most scary to insurance companies. If a lead actor gets sick and they have to shut down an entire production, that costs a lot of money. So particularly with talent, most of the talent lives in Los Angeles. And certainly a lot of the directors and producers come from there as well. And they want to limit travel, particularly international travel, and the exposure that international travel brings with it. So there's actually a lot of desire to find places that don't require a lot of travel. But also there's this other thing happening, which is that a lot of folks are trying to envision ways to move production out of densely populated places. So certainly two of the most active zones for production have been over the years, Los Angeles and New York. And those are two places that were hit very hard by the coronavirus and that will remain susceptible and are areas that a lot of communication can take place. So they're looking for other alternatives of places that they could go that can still service a production, but are not necessarily as densely populated. So I return to that desire for contained productions, and this is where I think we can identify some opportunity for Las Cruces. And I want to emphasize that I see that 2100 South Valley is something that can meet a need at this moment of where we stand in production. It is an existing, standing, usable asset that is in and of itself as a production container. So actually, in addition to maybe that one location horror movie, Hollywood is currently focusing a lot of attention on film and television productions that can be produced within the container, within the confines of a stage space of some kind. And so there has been a lot of inquiry about that space because it's a production container that exists, that it stands today, that somebody could move into tomorrow. Also, our lower population density is attractive to Hollywood, as well as our travel proximity. It doesn't take very long to get here. You don't have to take a very long flight, say from Los Angeles all the way across the country to Georgia. So you can eliminate your travel time on an airplane. The other thing the other market pressure is that this new coronavirus world of production is actually probably going to increase the overall cost of production for studios and production companies, because they are going to have to suddenly have medical advisors. They're going to have cleaning crews. They're going to have to buy out entire properties to house crews. So production costs are going to go up. Because production costs are going to go up, the shopping for tax incentives, which has always been a part of the industry for 20 years that I've been involved in it, is going to be more intense than ever before, which also makes Las Cruces very advantageous, because in Las Cruces, the maximum 35% of the state film incentive is achievable. If you take the base 25% tax incentive amount, you add on that 5% for using a qualified production facility, which, by the way, 2100 South Valley already is a qualified production facility. So anybody shooting their days in 2100 South Valley would get the additional 5% tax credit, and they would also be getting the 5% rural tax credit on top of that. So the 35% is ultimately achievable here in Las Cruces, which makes us very attractive as well. Now, so I've been fielding these conversations and these inquiries, but I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that I do have one recurring question, one what I would call as your salesperson, I would call a sales objection in the interaction. And that is the number one question about Film Las Cruces Studios, that is 2100 South Valley, is about sound treatment of the facility. And there's not a lot of sound treatment in that facility. And as you are well aware, it has a very close proximity to I-10. And so it needs additional sound treatment. And I know this has been discussed in the past, and there's a variety of opportunities possible. I do believe that for a fairly modest investment, that we could add sound treatment to 2100 South Valley and bring it to the point where we can overcome that objection in the sales conversation and make it much more marketable than it has been before. I'd also like to point out that I know that there's has to be consideration and discussion of the anti-donation clause, and that because 2100 is not owned by the city, it's owned by a private individual, that we can't do things to the facility which are become a permanent part of the facility. But it is possible to add soundproofing to 2100 South Valley without doing that. And without, I believe, without violating the anti-donation clause. So there's a couple of things that we could potentially do at 2100 South Valley. One is that we could install InsulQuilt, which is sort of the industry standard for soundproofing. It's a soundproofing material, like a blanket, which absorbs sound. InsulQuilt is one of the options available. And there also are possibilities of an exterior sound barrier. I read through the Zia Engineering sound assessment that they did a while back, and one of their main suggestions was to create some kind of a sound barrier between the studio itself and I-10 as well. And I just want to point out that InsulQuilt is a product which, yes, typically is installed in a permanent way. If you see on the slide, the upper left-hand corner there, you see that that's the typical installation of InsulQuilt and products like InsulQuilt in studios. But it doesn't have to be installed that way. Actually, InsulQuilt does a good portion of their business with product that's meant to be set up and taken down at a later date. They actually do a lot of soundproofing and sound amelioration for issue amelioration for construction sites, which are temporary. So it can be installed in a temporary basis. You could actually, we could actually purchase this as a movable asset, something that could be moved to a purpose-built facility when that time comes. And this is something that we could do and move in the future. In terms of a sound barrier too, we looked into a little bit about the possibility of using something even as simple as storage containers, shipping containers, stacked up between the facility itself and I-10. Shipping containers are actually frequently used for sound containment. It's a fairly quick and easy and fairly affordable approach. Shipping containers can either be purchased, they can be purchased new or used, and or even leased on a month-by-month basis as well. And that would address that possibility as well. So I wanted to bring this up because I do feel like the industry is going through a moment right now. The industry is changing and adapting, and certainly for the next 12 to 24 months, they're going to be looking for these opportunities for these contained spaces. And anybody who has one of these contained spaces is going to be in the conversation in the industry. As I'm sure you're aware, when Netflix purchased Albuquerque Studios in Albuquerque, it created already a bit of a shortage of soundstage inventory in the New Mexico market even before the pandemic. And now I think that pressure will be even higher because there will be more people looking for those kinds of production containers. So Film Las Cruces' recommendation is that the city should clarify sound treatment options and the conformity with anti-donation clause. And if we can identify that it is not a conflict with anti-donation clause, we actually encouraged an investment in some sound treatment for some portions of 2100 South Valley, because that will put us in the conversation in the market situation for available space in the industry, which is coming in high demand, in my belief. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Don. Mr. Mayor, next we have Dr. Monica Torres to speak about the opportunities with NMSU and the ACC.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Torres, you're muted. You want to unmute your...
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, members of the City Council. I'm going to share my screen with you as well.
And Dr. Torres, I just need you to state your name when you start speaking.
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Monica Torres, and I'm the president of Doña Ana Community College. And I'd like to thank you for the moment to present what a second option might look like. You know, the NMSU system has been talking for a long time about a creative campus, probably at least 5 years. Something, and it's felt like a pipe dream. But in the last year or so, there are some pieces that have started to fall into place that make it look like we might be able to move this forward. There we go. I wanted to go through kind of basically 5 general directions, as I want to provide a little bit of NMSU context in terms of what the system is thinking about in terms of strategic directions. I want to talk a little bit about digital media, and then I'll talk more specifically about what an opportunity and the vision of something called a creative campus, what it might actually look like. I'd like to talk a little bit about national and local trends, and then what are the resources the community college and the university bring as a system, and what might we be asking from the city of Las Cruces. So if you haven't looked at the system's strategic plan, you'll see that there are a number of elements in there. There's 4 major goals, and these are some of the elements within those goals that I think are critical, that would form something of a foundation for a project like this. One is the system's very interested in enhancing the social mobility of our students, and I'll talk a little bit why, but we probably don't need me to talk about why. We probably understand the context in the county. The second thing is NMSU is also interested in thinking, how do we apply research and creative activity to address local and global challenges? A third part is how do we prepare the workforce for today and tomorrow? A fourth element of the strategic plan is how do we support economic and community development? A fifth is that we're very interested in how do we enhance the PK-20 pipeline pathways to careers, so that students aren't just studying, but they're actually studying en route to somewhere meaningful. And then finally, we're interested in how do we strengthen our public and private engagement. If you take a look, and this is not going to be a surprise to anybody who works in meaningful ways in this county, but if you take a look at the median household income, you can see that we go from the United States down to goes all the way to the southern part of the county. And you can see that while the median household income in the country is $57,600, in New Mexico it drops to $46,700. And then when you look at Doña Ana County and Las Cruces, you're looking between $39,000 and $40,000. And then of course it drops precipitously from when you look at other parts of the county. But that's a pretty significant difference between the US and New Mexico and Las Cruces. If you look at the poverty rates, they match up exactly the same way. 12.3% in the United States. And all of this, I should say, was pre-COVID. I'm sure that these pictures have changed. I'm not sure if they've changed directions, but they've changed, I'm sure, since then. But if you look at a 12% poverty rate in the US and about a 20% in New Mexico, when you look at Las Cruces, Doña Ana County and Las Cruces, we're talking about a 24 to 26% poverty rate. So that part of the context for any work we do in the system is how do we address this issue? How do we address the issue of income and prosperity in our county and in our community? If you take a look at what is at social mobility, one of the great promises, I think, of higher education is that it means something in terms of social mobility. And if you look at these are average earnings in Doña Ana County, and if you round them for the state or the nation, you would find kind of a similar trajectory. But if you take a look, is it the more college credentials somebody has, the more income capacity they have in terms of their earning power. And in some cases, if you look at a high school diploma to a bachelor's degree, for example, that's a pretty substantial difference, not just in a year, but when you look over the course of a lifetime. In terms of economic impact, and I can talk about DACC did an economic impact study a couple of years ago, so this is specifically about DACC, but you can see that economic advantages don't simply accrue to the individual, although they do. So for example, for every dollar invested by a student, $5.20 come back to the student in lifetime earnings. But there are also broader positive economic impact, and that is for the taxpayer, $4.70 in added state revenue and social savings, in society, $15.70 in added taxes and public sector savings. So that when we think about a fundamental issue that we're all concerned with is increasing economic prosperity in our community, education is certainly one of the tools that we have to be able to do this. So I'm going to switch directions in terms of context and talk a little bit about digital media. I want to point to the two columns on the right, and that is digital media is, it's fair to say that our world is populated by digital media products. And I think I think COVID is going to make that more true rather than less true. Certainly that's what we're seeing in education. But if you take a look at that middle column, products, you can see that the kinds of technologies and skills and professions that will be needed to produce these documents, these games, these texts, these films, movie shows, all sorts of things. But I also want to point as an educator to the very bottom of that list, and that's textbooks. We're seeing educational materials becoming increasingly digital and using the skills of some of the professions in digital medias. And then the column on the right points to the variety of industries. Certainly entertainment is one of the big industries where we see digital media, but we're starting to see digital media, those skills and those technologies needed in many, many industries. When we think of the creative campus as an opportunity, I guess this is how we see it. The opportunity is to support high demand, good paying jobs with state-of-the-art digital and emerging media skill development. One of the things that I think is important is to understand that, as I said, is that digital media these technologies are becoming more important rather than less important, because we're seeing those sorts of needs emerge in industries, from healthcare to tourism to agriculture to education. That we're seeing it basically everywhere. And then we also know that the state has a number of priorities, including in film, tourism, agriculture, healthcare, and education, and that these sort of skills and technologies would be leveraged by the state's interest in these. If we talk about what this actually looks like, because a lot of times we talk about that, and I've got a couple of slides where I talk about this more specifically, is that what we're thinking of as a creative campus vision would be a collaboration that would be industry, government, and the academy working together to create a focus center of digital media. It would develop capacity to meet the needs of today and tomorrow. It would create education pathways from K to 12 to higher education to the workforce, so that we could kind of benefit from all of us working together and creating these pathways for children to adults and professional lives, and then to create linkages to local industries, as I said, healthcare, education, but agriculture, tourism, aerospace, entertainment industries. And then finally, one of the things I think that is interested in is one of the partners, obviously, is Arrowhead Park, is that we also want this to be a structure that drives innovation in the production of content, but I would say it also drives innovation in terms of education. So that what it would actually look like, and this is where I think we've started to take the tension. We've talked a lot about it conceptually, but we're starting to move in the direction of defining this, and that is that it would actually look like a group of facilities at Arrowhead Research Park functioning collaboratively to support digital media capacity in our community. That if I had to boil it down to a definition, that would be my definition. And that the capacity would again include training and production to support our digital needs today and tomorrow in a wide range of industries. The broader, kind of a broader picture here, and I want to talk about kind of the need in a couple of different ways, is that in a study by PricewaterhouseCoopers several years ago, the U.S. media and entertainment industry is the largest in the world, and it's expected to get larger. Is basically the nutshell of this. That we just see this need increasing tremendously. But I want to talk a little bit about the local picture as well. And again, I'm gonna make reference to some work that DACC has done to show a little bit about the kind of data that we're looking at. And some of this includes 2-year information, but 4-year information as well. So we contract with a company called Gray Associates to help us look at the strength of our programs within the context of the market. And they have a very complex scoring system. So I won't explain the scoring system, but what they're doing is they're looking at 4 areas that help us understand where we are positioned in the market: student demand, employment, kind of what we call fit, right? Do we have the right degrees for the job postings that are out there? And then what's our competition? What's the intensity of the competition around us? And so I'm going to show you some of their reports that are complicated given the way they do the scoring. But let me tell you kind of basically what to look for. The more blue, light green, and green you see on a page, the better we're positioned in the market. So in this particular, we're looking at creative media design, I believe is what, game and interactive media design, I'm sorry. So this is the chart for game and media active design. And I just want to call your attention again to blue, light green, and green, right? That's going to tell you the strength of the scoring in each of those areas. And so part of what they look on the left is student demand. On the bottom is degree fit. Do we have the right degrees? In the middle is competitive intensity. What is our competition like in our region? And what does the employment look like? And again, you can just see that the overall score in the top right is kind of a light green, which is a strong score for the overall score when they combine those 4 areas. If we take a look at the next one, which is graphic design, you'll see again a very strong overall score, and you'll see a lot of light green, blue, and then dark green. And then the third one is cinematography and film video production. Again, strong scores. But the reason I wanted to show you these is that we don't want to, we're quite interested in, 1, not starting programs where there's not a need in the community, or 2, starting programs where students, when they graduate, aren't going to make salaries that make sense given their investment in the education. So let me talk a little bit about the assets that the NMSU system brings to this project. One is one of the most important assets is space at NMSU's Arrowhead Research Park. The second thing is Arrowhead Park has recently been engaged in an urban planning study to figure out what would this look like, right? What might a community there look like? As Griselda mentioned, DACC in a local bond has $3.9 million toward a 15,000 square foot facility for the kind of education that we provide. We would also need to look for 1.5 million in addition to this to complete the funding for a 15,000 square foot building, and we're looking at for right now. We will present to the state capital outlay group. We'll also look at reserves for the rest of that funding. We do have funding for a design study for a Creative Media Institute facility. And as you know, we have 2 academic programs that offer certificates, associate degrees, and bachelor's degrees in the system. We have faculty who are experienced professionals in this industry. And one of the other things that I think is kind of an interesting addition is that we also have a unit that could support customized non-credit training for short-term specialized needs. And so that would add a little bit of a dimension to kind of the credit programs. And then recently, as Dr. Martinez mentioned, we've got feedback from an NMSU-sponsored charrette that was held on March 11th. And this is just more information about the academic programs. The 2-year DACC has 3 associate degrees and 9 workforce certificates, and the university has 2 bachelor's degrees that are offered out of the Creative Media Institute. When I think about the benefits of a creative campus, I think of it as something of a hub. So there are individual spokes with specific functions, but the design is to intersect at the center so that there's a broad impact. And so the impact would be that there would be training available for students who are looking to start or in advance in a career, credentials that assure a qualified workforce for existing industry, skills that promise to solve 21st century challenges, and a workforce and a community that potentially drives additional investment in the local economy. And so for me, it's this collection or this collective that really offers potential for broad impact for our community. Of course, the collaboration offers some very specific benefits as well, that are more precise. So if we design and plan together, we have the option to develop in ways that maximize space to eliminate duplications. We have the opportunity to build in such a way that enhances opportunities to interact and collaborate. And this helps us build public-private partnerships that will support additional community development and other opportunities. So the next steps for the Creative Campus would be that we coordinate education, city, and industry partners to develop and implement a plan. The NMSU system has asked me to take lead on this coordination. And so this is certainly kind of a definitive step in moving that direction. The second would be build a facility funded by DACC to support 2 goals. One is instruction that prepares students for the digital media workforce, which is our primary goal, right, as a community college, as a teaching institution. But we're also interested in developing space that helps us work with public and private partners to expand digital media capacity in the community. So it's not just about students, although clearly that's our primary mission, but it's also about partnerships that allow us to provide more opportunities for our students and more capacity in our community. And finally, a next step I see would be to secure funding for a second facility that provides additional instructional opportunities, right, in ways that decrease repetition or duplication, but also increases digital media capacity in the region. So for example, if I were to think of the Creative Campus and the kind of instruction we would provide, something like a post-production facility or a sound stage would complement that and allow us to start building a real community that expands capacity. So the ask from the system would be that we craft a broad MOU between the City of Las Cruces and the NMSU system to underscore partnership intent and commitment, to utilize existing City of Las Cruces funding to build a second facility on the campus that supports workforce training and public-private partnerships to expand capacity in digital media, which is clearly an industry position to facilitate post-COVID economic recovery. All indications are pointing in that direction. And then to collaborate with the NMSU system, to asking the city to collaborate with the NMSU system on a grant proposal to supplement funding for a second facility. Thank you.
So, Dr. Torres, thank you for that presentation. I believe Senator Jeff Steinborn he had a question, has his hand up. So, Senator, you have a comment or a question? You probably need to unmute yourself.
Can folks hear me okay?
Ah, there you go.
Thank you. I'm Senator Jeff Steinborn. I'm the president of Film Las Cruces, and I appreciate the good conversation today about the future of film and specifically our efforts to build a studio or have a functioning studio facility in Las Cruces. I want to say, first of all, thank you to Dr. Torres and NMSU. DACC has really been an incredible leader in helping to put us in the situation we're in now, starting with Dr. Renee Scott, who was the past president, helping to partner with Film Las Cruces to convert 2100 South Valley into a studio. And what we did simultaneously with that was we moved the film crew training program to that studio And that program just shot up, and enrollment has been very high since then. And we've been producing a lot of crew, and also hosting almost every film production that's come to Las Cruces since then have used that facility in one way or another, including The Mule. Clint Eastwood's The Mule used the facility, and Walking with Her filmed in there as well. And all major productions of any size need a facility like that for one reason or another. So thank you to the community college. And now, as you've heard, they've funded through their bond issue a next level facility for digital media, which is very much a critical part of Film Las Cruces' mission. And I want to say that hearing the talk about the Creative Campus is exciting for us. It's something that a conversation that we started years ago. In fact, we had a former board member, CMI professor, who's now a department head in Arizona, named Derek Fisher, who we did a lot of research at Garson Studios in Santa Fe that has a very successful model of co-locating an academic space with the commercial space. And we very much have been advocating for this partnership. So the Creative Campus idea is very much kind of the holy grail that we would love to see happen. But clearly there's a need for a lot of additional funding in order to make that happen with the city funds. So I want to just address the question at hand today for you, Council, which is you were presented with two options by your Economic Development Department. One, do something with 2100. Two, try to do something at the Creative Campus. What I'd like to suggest to you is a third option, which is kind of a hybrid. And number one, as Don laid out, when we talk about Creative Campus, understand as far as recruiting film jobs and creating film jobs here, that's a very much a future tense discussion. And whereas if we're serious about film economic development, we need to be looking at what are we doing today? What are we doing a year from now? And that opportunity rests exclusively with 20, as far as, the traditional film industry and the $500 million film industry in the state of New Mexico, that opportunity rests in 2100 South Valley. And so I think our suggestion of looking at investing in sound treating is really the way to go. It can be for $20,000 or $30,000, más o menos. We can invest in sound treating material that'll greatly help us. We were contacted by a series that's trying to get picked up by Netflix, looking at Las Cruces right now because of the COVID situation. And Don didn't mention that, but the sound treating of the facility is a very serious need for us to improve it. And that's funding that we could then pivot to an existing new purpose-built studio if that happens. Sound treating is very common in purpose-built studios, and it's part of the deal. And so we can just pivot that asset. So that makes all the sense in the world. So with a new option 3, I would say, let's get to the bottom of the anti-donation issue. And then if possible, let's look at some of those investments with the funding that we have, which is very nominal. But I think whether or not the city decides to purchase 2100 South Valley, which by the way, can be purchased for less than $2 million, and then retrofitted for probably más o menos another $2 million. I mean, you could spend more, certainly you could spend a lot less to get that done. That's funding that exists right now. Or if you choose to do a purpose-built, you have a gap funding need there of about $7-8 million. Both of those scenarios, you all as council and we as a city and us as Film Las Cruces, we don't have all the full facts to make a decision. It's really dependent upon, can we find a partner to invest the funds? And do we have a solid management partner, which is important to all of us to ensure success, a film production partner or a content producer like Netflix or NBC Universal that wants to invest in Las Cruces and be here for a long time. That would be fantastic. I want to say that, and so I would suggest to you option 3 basically leaves both options open depending upon what type of partnership we're able to arrange. We would agree the holy grail, the best case option for us is if we can find a partner and do the Creative Campus. That's the ideal mousetrap for this community. But we shouldn't be so myopically focused on that if we cannot find a partner that we can find that $7-8 million, that we should foreclose the stepped up approach of finding a partner to help us manage a retrofitted 2100. And so, by the way, I think I would look to even include in that some expanded partnerships with DACC. I just want to add, Mayor, Council, that the state of New Mexico, you need to be aware, has invested, by my math, $27 million approximately of LEDA funds into building 3 studios in the state already. The state of New Mexico has invested $27 million. They invested $10 million into Netflix. They invested $7 million is, I believe, the number in acquiring basically a studio like a building like 2100 to work with NBC Universal. This was just in the last year. And previously under Bill Richardson, they invested $10 million of LEDA to build Santa Fe studios. So what I've been pushing for, and I have certainly been encouraging your economic development department, and now I'm going to encourage you today, is that politically speaking, we all need to be leaning on the state of New Mexico very hard to create the same opportunity for Las Cruces. We've got $3.8 million. State of New Mexico have a lot of LEDA funds, and it's time that they find a content producer like NBC, like Amazon, like Netflix to locate in Las Cruces, utilizing our funds, partnering with state LEDA funds, and that politically, we ought to be doing this as a part of our stated strategy and raise it at all political levels, you, Mayor, the council, and the staff. So with that, that's my 2 cents. I appreciate you letting me speak today, Mayor.
Boy, I hate to see what a dollar was. Thank you for that, Senator. Dr. Martinez has a comment she'd like to make, and then I'll open it up to council.
Yes, Mayor, City Council, to clarify, the options that I presented were up to the point of the charrette, which was talking about a film studio. Dr. Torres is talking about as she mentioned in her, I think it was her last slide, it was to utilize the funding to build a second facility on the campus that would support workforce training and public-private partnership to expand the capacity in digital media. So this would be a workforce training for the digital media. And so I would call it a 2.B option. 2.A was the film studio that had been the discussion up to this additional alternative, which is a middle ground in between the film studio, and this would be expanded to the digital media. Also, I believe that the presentation that Mr. Gray included the incentives. Those incentives would apply for employers in the digital media as a whole sector, as it is in the film industry.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Martinez. So we have Councilor Sorg, Vasquez, and Abeta Stuvey. So Councilor Sorg, you've got the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If Dr. Martinez could put up that slide that has the options again, so we can all be looking at that as we discuss this. And as she does that, I would like to tell you that I look at the long term here, the long range plans for the city of Las Cruces. To me, it's all about jobs. Jobs for our people in Las Cruces, especially even low income jobs and some in middle income jobs, to increase their wealth. As you didn't know, many of the jobs in the film industry start out at $20 an hour. Some don't, but many of them do. And so this is a way to increase their income and increase their wealth and increase social justice in Las Cruces. This is also diversifying our economy. And if you recall the report we got from DE Labs in Albuquerque here a week or two ago, that was one of the items that they said would be helpful for us to get back to the economy we had before the COVID-19. And of course, that's what they were talking about when they were talking about economic-based jobs. These are economic-based jobs. These bring in money from outside our community and provide our service jobs, more service jobs with economic-based jobs. I have some questions, but I also wanted to mention a couple other things first. All along, at least in the last few years anyway, I'll say, I often wondered why we didn't work with the state's economic development department. Um, this is something that Senator Steinborn, as well as Don Gray, mentioned, that we should be getting some partnerships with the economic development department in the state. I understand the previous government administration maybe not most cooperative with this kind of a thing, but now with the administration we have in Santa Fe now, I think we have a much better opportunity to do that. A mention on the sound, fixing the sound in the soundstage on 2100 Valley. I often wondered how, if those people that have ever seen it, the soundstage at called I-25 Studios in Albuquerque, they're right next to Interstate 25, and yet they handle their sound too. So some cooperation there that was done early on when the 2100 Valley Drive was looked at, and to revisit that a little bit might be helpful. And as long as I'm on that topic of sound stages, I strongly recommend our newer members of the City Council take a look at Doña Ana Community College's CMI, or CMT rather, program they have at the East Campus there. It's very educational, and you get a good idea of what they do, and it's something that's very interesting too, as well as CMI at NMSU. If you haven't seen that yet, ask for a tour. I've been able to tour both places even more than once. Now, the questions I have are for Don Gray. Those that you talk to that may be interested in Las Cruces as a place to do their films, have they ever asked if we have a facility such as a soundstage that would be part of their production? Have they asked one? Is that one that is that something that maybe they've shied away, Las Cruces, because we don't have a purpose-built one? Mr. Gray?
I definitely think that prior to, what's interesting is that prior to the pandemic, probably some inquiries started to come in because some people were aware that there was some kind of an existing facility here. But the point I was trying to make was that because of this shift in how productions are going to have to be contained and made for the next 12 to 24 months, that's actually changed the conversation to the point where almost everybody I'm talking to that is inquiring about Las Cruces is asking the question about whether we have an existing facility, or they are aware of the existing facility and they are asking questions about that facility, specific questions. That's what led me to my observation that the number one question I was getting was, what is the existing sound treatment in the facility?
I see. Well, thank you. It seems, from all I've read in the packet and all that we've talked about, it seems like the biggest stumbling block for the new purpose-built soundstage was trying to find a manager for that soundstage. Mr. Gray, do you have some insight on the possibilities of having a manager to manage a purpose-built soundstage or any soundstage here?
You mean an outside party that would contract to run the facility?
Yeah, any manager that's capable of doing it, really.
Mm. I don't have any insight necessarily on that specifically, okay, but it's certainly something to pursue. I do think, Counselor, the thing that I'm trying to say is that this moment in production may be the point at which we can jump into the pool in a way that we haven't been in before, to where the answers to questions like the one that you're asking, for example, is there a management company out there that might be interested in contracting and doing business in Las Cruces? The answer to that is that probably that their first question would be, is there any production in Las Cruces? And that's why I think that we shouldn't pass up this moment of availability of a facility, the need for a container facility, and that we might, it's sort of like everybody standing around the pool and who's going to be the first one to jump in and tell us what the temperature is. We just want to entice somebody to jump into the pool, and then there'll be a lot more of those questions that'll be easier to answer, or that people will have more interest in, because they'll see that there is energy here.
Yeah, good. It reminds me of the cart and the horse, which comes
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
I've noticed that in the past. That's what we have here. It's a little bit of a problem there. But yeah, okay, I understand. I think I had it for me now, Mr. Mayor. One last comment I'll make. As you were talking about, Don, about the travel and travel from LA to Las Cruces and how advantageous it can be. I'm reminded at one, if not the first, film festival we had here in Las Cruces that was put on, the feature film that was locally made by Mark Medoff. I forget the name of it right now, but Linda Hamilton starred in it. And she tells a story about how, well, she liked Mark and would always want to do something that he asked her to do. And what she did is, and those that don't know, Linda Hamilton is of Terminator fame. She jumped in her car with the other co-star from LA and just drove here, came here, did the film, and drove home. It was that easy. That road was. She enjoyed the trip and she had a good time here. Okay, Mr. Mayor, that's all.
Thank you, Councilor Sword. Councilor Vasquez and Councilor Beitestubi.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Dr. Torres so much for her wonderful presentation and Mr. Gray's presentation as well. So I think we've had some difficulties, right, in being able to lock down the soundstage contract for the last several years and figuring out what the fate is of this capital outlay expenditures that have been brought to the city that I know we've asked for and that we've been negotiating with in terms of having the maximum impact in our community and trying to get a piece of the pie of the film industry in Las Cruces. And I think we've all heard different discussions at different times. Certainly we're in a time today in which the film industry certainly has changed quite a bit as the rest of the state's economy and the nation's economy. And so I think at least myself, I'm having a different conversation in my head about what the most important thing is at this time in terms of investing this capital outlay funding and the partnerships that we can create in the city for some more long-term economic opportunity. And to me, that seems like from the wonderful presentation that Dr. Torres gave us, and thank you so much again, Dr. Torres, because you really laid it out in a way that makes a very compelling case for this community partnership, that DACC creating essentially its own facility and then the city chipping in for a additional workforce training facility that has the benefits of job creation and upward mobility for local students seems to me like a more prudent investment and like the wiser option in terms of where, how long our dollars will go and what kind of impact they will have on the people in our community. I am curious to know about, maybe this question is for Mr. Gray, the existing film studio. If you could just kind of recap what kind of economic activity has been generated from the film studio in the last several months, or I guess maybe since we last discussed this, which has to have been at least 6 months or so. But curious to see what type of activity the film studio is doing. I know there's a lot of student projects and academic endeavors happening there, which is great. But in terms of commercial use of the studio and it bringing in revenue. Mr. Gray, if you have any information that you could share on that, that'd be appreciated.
Sorry. Since I'm new to the area and to the job, I don't have all of the history of what has occurred there recently. I do know that the last commercial production to use the facility was the production called Death in Texas, which was an independent film. And I'll actually defer to Senator Steinborn for any more historical background on that, because I'm just not as intimate with that information yet. So.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. And sure, if Mr. Steinborn, Senator Steinborn would like to provide any context or input.
Okay, so I don't have an exact number of economic activity. I can tell you that, you know, that the city of Las Cruces, Counselor, you should know, has not spent, outside of buying some sets for $20,000, has not spent a dime, I think, on the studio. It has been completely underwritten by the community college, and it has primarily been used for training, which has been great because we've been producing film crew, and again, the facility has been underwritten by the community college for that. So the economic activity that we would love to achieve in this town hasn't gotten to the point where we would love. And that is why, frankly, as Film Las Cruces, we had not advocated spending any of that money that we've appropriated, because like you, we don't believe in, we don't want to spend any of that money until we have a partnership that we know will get us that return on investment. And so what the facility has mainly been used for is training, and then has also been there as an asset for when films come to town, being able to have that. Because without the studio there, it's very much a chicken and the egg kind of a situation. If you don't have a studio, you will never get a TV show. Lots of feature films that use it wouldn't come. Death in Texas wouldn't have come. And so, and the show that we're talking to right now wouldn't consider Las Cruces. So it's kind of like, it's an investment. It's an asset that we have to have if we want to attract that level. But the good news for the city taxpayers is that we haven't spent any of that money on it. It's being underwritten for a training facility.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that, that honest answer. This question is maybe for Dr. Torres in terms of the DACC's plans for its campus, Creative Campus. I don't know if you also can maybe go back to the slide, Dr. Torres, where you talk about the joint facility opportunity. And the question is your facility going to be available for commercial filming? And will it serve essentially a similar, if not a very, or almost the same purpose as the existing studio that DACC is leasing at the Coca-Cola building now?
Thank you for the question, Counselor. You know, this is not an area that DACC we've historically engaged in terms of public-private partnerships, but it's an area that we're definitely interested in pursuing. So our goal actually is to engage with private entities and to try and figure out how we can make things available in partnership that serve. And I can give you another example. I was talking to the department chair of our creative media program yesterday, and we were talking about, here's the kind of partnerships we're trying to think about it. We have equipment that's pretty high-end equipment. And he and our computer tech department chair were talking about the possibility, what if we had our equipment available for training between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. at night, right? Which would allow for classes to continue, and it would allow for students to study after class. But what are there things we could do, such as allow that equipment to be rented overnight for rendering, for example, right? Mm-hmm. Or for things that require some high-end equipment use. So we have not done this historically, Councilor Vasquez, but we are interested in pursuing these sorts of partnerships and are kind of poised to start exploring those in an active way.
Thank you, Dr. Torres. I appreciate that. And I think, yeah, all the benefits we can offer to a potential film, especially, maybe some of the indie films or some of the, not super Hollywood blockbuster type of films, in terms of resources in addition to the incentives that the state and now our local municipality offers would be, I think, of added benefit. And so I think, again, investing in the workforce, in our local workforce, and those long-term job training opportunities, especially I think in those higher paying jobs when it comes to the digital media production, right? Not necessarily exclusive to film, but the gaming industry, and the cell phone games and all that kind of stuff. That's just really, the industry is just kind of booming. I know in terms of the animated stuff. Across different digital platforms is very important to me, because that gives our young people an opportunity to get engaged in that industry, perhaps even to start a business here, or those types of office operations that don't require you to be in Hollywood, but you can do remotely with a good internet connection and good equipment like Ganymede Games. I think is a great example of that. Okay, well, I think those are all my questions. I think I'm leaning towards option 2B. I think because of the uncertainty of the film industry, today, and just some of the issues we've had, especially with our private industry partners, just kind of falling out over the last couple of years. Being able to finally allocate this funding towards something concrete would be beneficial at this point in terms of using this money. So thank you, Mayor, and thank you again to all of our presenters.
Thank you, Councilor Abate-Stuby.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Martinez, Dr. Torres, and Mr. Gray for your presentations. I do appreciate it. For a little bit for my own history, I have a couple questions for Dr. Martinez first. And the first one is, what performance-based measures were added to the contract, I believe, with the Film Las Cruces?
Mayor, Councilor Abate-Stuby, this is part of that we started for all contracts with the city tied to peak performance. And so Film Las Cruces performance contract was one of the first ones that we worked on for this transition. So examples of, I don't have the contract in front of me here, but examples would be number of crew members here in Las Cruces, and training opportunities offered at the facility, economic impact of production done here in Las Cruces. Those are a few examples, but I can share with you the contract for the specific details.
Fantastic, thank you. I think a lot of my first questions revolve around those types of questions as well. And I believe Councilor Vasquez asked a bit, but if we've been able to kind of track or see how much revenue the productions have been able to generate in our city. And this could be a question for Film Las Cruces, if they have any indicator of those impacts that it's had.
I'm trying to unmute myself. So I've gotten a text. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I understand I need to be unmuted the video. But anyway, I've just gotten a text from my staff. One example, Counselor, was Death in Texas. It was filmed here, had a $940,000 impact on the city, for example. So just the spend on local hotels. I think the Mule, when they were here, generated about $10,000 in taxes just by themselves the 10 days they were here. Keep in perspective, the city pays a total of $95,000 a year. So it's pretty significant. When they come, they spend a lot of money in a short amount of time. And these were productions, just a few productions. But Death in Texas, of course, many of you toured the set at Film Las Cruces Studios, and you saw it. It was a relatively small independent film. It generated $940,000 direct economic impact in the Las Cruces.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for bringing that up. I did, get an opportunity to go look at the set. Oddly enough, I have a brother who works in film, and yeah, I'd never been on a set before. And when I was talking with the people on set, I asked, what makes Las Cruces a really desirable place, and what are some of the challenges? And they did say that having skilled workforce down here seemed to be one of the greatest challenges for getting those productions to really commit to Las Cruces. And so I do think that kind of, in my mind, looks at the fact that, we need to focus on that workforce development. Are we still seeing those types of comments coming from potential productions? Oh, and I think you're on mute, Senator.
Yeah, Senator.
For sure. And it's very much a chicken and the egg challenge that you have growing a crew base, that you need production in order to achieve. We have a non-unionized film crew in Las Cruces. Where we have a deficit is in unionized film crew. And the film industry above about $1 million budget of a film production, everything above that is very unionized, and the film productions want it that way because of all the safety protocols. But in order to be a union crew member, you have to work on a union show. And so one of the challenges we have here is how do you grow that crew base if you don't have that type of production here? And so that's where Film Las Cruces Studios is very, very important, is that by facilitating the DACC film crew training program, when people graduate that program, they get half their days towards joining a union crew. And then as film productions come in that we accommodate because we have that space, we're then able to get them shows like Death in Texas became a union show, and we ended up with union crew members out of it, carpenters, others, craft services, people who had never even worked on a film. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing that we need to work on simultaneously, and it's part of the mission of Film Las Cruces. And yes, we do and will for a while continue to have that need. And that's where, unless you have a facility like Film Las Cruces Studios, it's going to be very hard to be candid. The film industry as it exists now, needs probably about 40,000 square feet to accommodate even a movie or let alone a TV series, because the stage part is only one part of it with a 15 to 20,000 foot stage. Then you need another several thousand square feet of offices and a construction mill and others. So the facility is a great opportunity for us in that way. And it's important to understand if that's the type of jobs we're trying to create, you need that type of a space. And I totally agree with all the comments about going after the digital jobs big time. I think that's very exciting. But anyway, hope that helps.
Thank you.
Counselor, could I add something as well to that discussion? This is Don Gray.
Yes, sir.
I also wanted to mention that as a result of what I was talking about before, of that need for those sort of production containers for the next 12 or 24 months, it's a very interesting conversation that I've started with a company, a production company, equipment company here in New Mexico called PRG, and with Matt Burns over at Doña Ana Community College. I don't know if anybody here watches The Mandalorian, but if you watch The Mandalorian, you might be amazed by the high production values and locations in that production. The locations that you see in the background in the Mandalorian are not real. They're 100% generated by the actual Unreal Engine, which is a game creation, background creation software. And they are actually projected on very large LED screens that are behind the actors. This is all done on a stage facility. And the reason that I wanted to put PRG, which actually provides those LED screens, together with Doña Ana Community College as well, one was because PRG needs trained professionals that know how to set up and operate those screens. but also because this is another very, very interesting, when you talk about jobs available in the industry, here's a really interesting shift. It used to be that most of the people that did, say, green screen replacement or explosive special effects, digital special effects, would only be a part of the production after a production was shot. So in the post-production phase. And most post-production is done and probably will remain being done. The majority of it will remain being done in Los Angeles. But because of now these new technologies for shooting productions and the demand for them so that you can keep them in that kind of container situation, they're going to actually have to move a lot of those folks that would have normally done things in post-production into the pre-production phase, where the director will work with the digital artists in order to create the backgrounds and the worlds that the actors will be acting against, and have them here during the shoot as well, because, you know, there's going to be a director who says, hey, you know that mountain in the background? Well, I've changed my mind. Take the mountain out. And they'll have to be digital engineers who will be able to do that. And the beautiful thing is DACC is training those people already. And so I love the idea of a container existing here, a production that has the equipment to create the backdrops, and then our students, our graduates, actually having jobs that not only are available in the post-production phase, but in pre and shoot phase of a production. That's a whole new thing in Hollywood that's brand new, that I think we have actually some unique assets to take advantage of in Las Cruces.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Before I jump, Councilor Abeyta-Stube, looks like Mandy Gus wanted to make a quick comment. If I could let her speak real quick.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilor Abeyta-Stube. You asked about the contract measurements that we have. Dr. Martinez was correct when she mentioned some of the items. I just wanted to give you a quick review of them. It's the number of production days shooting in the city, the spend amount by productions in the city, the number of production-related film permits, growing the crew database in the city, the number of worker days in the city, and then the overflow list membership, as well as the number of businesses that are in their film-friendly business program. And then the number of databases in the film locations database. So in addition to those are just the metrics that we have asked them to track. And they give us I think a monthly report, but quarterly they send us a report. And as of March, Film Las Cruces was on track to meet all of the goals for this year. I think if they don't meet them, they'll be closed, because we know that obviously COVID-19 has impacted some of the ability to do the work. But in addition to them providing that information to staff on a monthly and quarterly basis, we do ask Film Las Cruces to do an annual report to City Council, which I believe is tentatively scheduled for next month. So they'll go over all of those metrics, where they are, and whatever may have impacted the performance. So council will get a full report from them.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
man. Thank you. My next question would be for Dr. Torres. And we talked a lot about the partnership between students and getting them from being students to be in the skilled workforce. And I was wondering if we've tracked the number of students, even post-graduation, how many were able to make that career fulfillment of becoming active on sets, and even if we are tracking those that have made it to becoming union members.
Mayor and Council Member Abeyta-Stube, I don't have that information with me. One of the issues I think that higher ed has right now, and that we continue to have, is the people that we track best into the workforce are the people in healthcare. And that's because we have accreditation, and that those programs happen to be a little bit smaller. So I can tell you that's where DACC is. Those are the people we track best into the workforce. I do know, actually tracking them into the union is probably a little bit easier But I don't have that information with me, but I would be happy to pursue that with the department chair, and see if I can get you that information.
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely.
And thank you. I mean, for me, it's an exciting opportunity, but I know with current situations, we have to be very mindful. As I said before, my brother works in film. He does high productions. I mean, with Marvel, stuff like that. He's in lighting and electrics. And so it's fascinating, but he's on hold until September. And that's kind of best case scenario. So we don't know kind of what the future holds on that. And I'm always inclined to make sure that we have that workforce. That consistently was an item that kept being brought up by those that were renting out the space at Film Las Cruces when I visited. It was brought out more than once that training, that skilled workforce was needed. And so I consider that a long-term investment for our community to have that. So I look forward to hearing the report next month as well from Film Las Cruces, and then also to getting that information from you, Dr. Torres. Thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Counselor. Looks like we have, let me just verify. Dr. Martinez, did you have another question, or did you forget to put your hand down? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Gandara, and then Counselor Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Torres, Dr. Martinez, everybody, Don, I appreciate that. I agree, this is really exciting, but as someone who has heard now for the 5th year around film, it certainly is a chicken, an egg situation. We're gonna have to take a risk, and I've often have felt, so 2 things. I think because the information is old but valid, I know that there was a report from the consultants as it related to the Coke building that I think would be helpful to have. I know early on in my, when I first got elected, that was something that was shared with us. And I think having that information would certainly be helpful moving forward, so we have a better understanding what we're trying to work with. The other thing is, I would agree, if we are having current conversations as the Film Las Cruces is having with people that want to come into the fold, but we need better sound and those kinds of things. Working through the anti-donation and putting forth whatever, I don't know if that is $30,000 to $40,000. I think Senator Steinborn mentioned that. Don, do you have a better estimate in terms of how much that sound, whatever that terminology is, that we would need to capture some of the smaller productions, like the series, maybe commercials, things of that sort?
Yes, Counselor and Mayor, thank you so much. I think 30 to 40 is probably a reasonable guesstimate at this stage based on some of the preliminary research that I've done.
Perfect, thank you. I don't
Excuse me,
think
excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem, that was Don Gray speaking. I'm just trying to keep that on so that Christine can do the minutes. Go ahead, I apologize.
No worries, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think we're going to have to spend some money to be able to get, people to come to the table as we move forward, which then means helping build the union piece of the workforce that needs to have the experience, right? So that's not a lot of money, I think, in the whole scope of things as we move forward. And it's going to be, I think it'll be well worth it, knowing that we have what the needs are. I especially, Dr. Torres, it was, thank you for that, for the statistics. I think overall we've been asking for some of that data, and it's good to see that piece as we move forward. And so I'm really excited. There were many items in the green and blue, I think you said, and being able to partner with the university is exciting, and I think we need to move very quickly into those MOUs, whatever we need to do that, and it is something that for sure I would definitely approve of doing. The only other opportunity again is, or concern that I have is, I know that we were putting a lot of money into what might look at the Coca-Cola building as maybe of the possibility of a soundstage. So I'm sorry, Dr. Martinez, I know you had your hand up at one time. Could we get that? Could we get that report, and will that report be good? Because I think it's a few years old at least.
Yes, Mayor, Councilor Gandara, Mayor Pro Tem. The reports, yes, we can make those available in the report that I put together in lieu of when we canceled the work session. I pretty much summarized the findings through the different reports. If you would like, I can just walk us through the highlights of those reports if you see that needed. The first report done was a building conditions assessment, and it was done for a two-part. The first one was just for general purposes, and it included bringing the building up to code, evaluating the heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, the plumbing, the fire sprinkler system, and electrical systems. And then the second part of the report included the same items, but specific for the film studio utilization, which would be a little bit more specialized. For instance, in the plumbing, they talked about adding, if we were to mirror that building to I-25 studios in Albuquerque, adding an area for laundry, which is something that they have at I-25. So that is for the building conditions assessment. The second evaluation done, that was the most recent and the one that led for us not to move forward with the purchase, was a sound and vibration study. And that's where it led to the sound being an issue for film production. And the recommendation in the report was to build a wall that at that point, I believe we evaluated I believe it was about $500,000. And so at that point, we hadn't, the solutions of sound abatement that have been discussed today, at that point, we were not aware of those solutions. We went with the recommendations provided in the report. Another item that was part of that evaluation was the different price that that 2100 South Valley building had at that point, which was, I believe was 2.4 million. It's, let me find it here. It was 2.4 million, and also the two appraisals that were completed for that building. One was 1.775, and the other one was for 1.925 at that moment. One of the reasons to the price of the reduction, as I spoke to the real estate agent recently, is that a part of the land in the back side was sold to a different owner, so that changed a little bit the size of the property as well in this last few months.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez. I appreciate you going over that step by step. I think that's really important for me anyhow. My second question is for Dr. Torres. You had made mention looking for a partner, right, to build, am I assuming a soundstage and for workforce, but it could be used for specifically being able to recruit doctors. Is that true, or would it be simply for workforce development?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the very last part of your question?
If the last part, it's more about, I know that looking for someone to help sort of build this sound stage, but would we be able to use that for the commercial benefit, being able to recruit like big productions and whatnot?
Mm-hmm. I think our goal would be to figure out how we do that, because we're interested in doing that. In fact, the value of working with the main campus, the city, and other partners is to create those sort of opportunities that would drive not just workforce development, but economic development. So our intention would be to look for that sort of partnership. Yes.
Okay, cool. And do you think that we would have to continue, or you would continue to use the Coca-Cola building as an opportunity? Because right now it's being used for students, correct?
That's correct. At this point, to be frank, I don't know. But what I do know is that we've had a really good relationship with Film Las Cruces. And the reason I don't know is I don't know how how things will change in configuration as we bring up a creative campus.
Yeah.
So there may be some, I suspect that there might be some opportunities at the Coca-Cola plant at 2100 down the road that I'm just not seeing, because I don't know what the complete configuration is. But to be frank, we would have to reassess as things start to emerge. We would want to reassess is what's our investment. But there may be some things available at 2100 that we don't have available at Creative Campus, because when we configure collectively, we think, why would we do that here and there? And so my sense is that we would have to reassess. I'm not able to say a definitive yes or no. We would have to reassess, but that would be part of the collaboration, right? That we would be building with that in mind.
Sure. I guess I don't want to get into the situation where because I can see us doing a creative space there at the university to help with their students and build our workforce and whatnot. But I think that I don't want us to compete with,
Right.
one or the other. I want us to really build from that, right? And I'm afraid that we might find ourselves as we move forward and working with the university. And I'm not trying to suggest not to. I think that's an excellent idea. Is that, first and foremost, I would think if your goal is to educate our students, right? And although I'm sure the film productions is a way to do some of that, it isn't in its entirety, right? And so I don't want us to compete, and make sure that we understand that, what that might look like. So I understand that I certainly don't want to close the door on the Coca-Cola building. I think it offer some nice opportunities, especially with the space. And for $30,000-$40,000 to be able to recruit a series, commercial, maybe gaming, which the students then will benefit, is something I think kind of a win-win for everybody. So I don't want us to forget.
Mayor, Councilor, you're absolutely right. And I think Senator Steinborn, has made the case several times about the chicken and the egg, right?
Yeah.
Is that we have to have something that will appeal to industry to come here. And we need these other things. We need workforce training opportunities to build that. And I think he's made a really compelling case. And I would not want us to be in a either or competition to the detriment. I mean, I feel like the community has lots of resources, and that as we move forward planning, right, both in the short term and the long term, what are those resources and how can we bring those resources to bear to serve our students and our community and our economy?
I agree. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Torres, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Vasquez?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just one question for staff in terms of the outcome of the work session here. Clarification, Dr. Martinez, on reaching consensus from council on one of these options, or how have you felt so far in terms of the comments? I see we have still some comments, I think, from Councilor Sword, but what are we doing moving forward from this work session, given the comments so far and staff's direction?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilor Vasquez. I've heard support of an MOU with DACC and NMSU. I've also heard support on us exploring for the purchase of sound abatement for 2100. Those are my takeaways up to this point. One item that I think it's important to highlight from what Dr. Torres has mentioned is the Creative Campus is for the digital media. And so that's I think a broader approach, and with film as one element to that. But those are my two takeaways. If I need to adjust, please let me know.
Okay, no, that sounds about right to me. I just wanted to make sure in terms of recapping where we're at. But thank you, Dr. Martinez. Thank you, Mayor.
You're trying to take my job away. Let's see, Councilor Sword, yeah, question?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yeah, I don't know if it's an either or situation here. I think it's something we have to do it all. Both of the and the other parts, we have to be doing it. Go ahead and do the low hanging fruit that is in the list there, but we have to be ready with all of this in case the time comes when we really do need a studio and we have the industry coming and wanting to use facilities here. So I don't think we need to eliminate anything from the list. I think we have to concentrate on those things that we can do right now. The sound proofing of 2100 for sure. But also keep in mind we need to have a plan and a way to get a purpose-built studio on the Arrowhead campus there at NMSU, together with the Creative Media campus too. So let's not eliminate any of these things. These are all needed.
Thank you, Councilor Sword. Councilor Abeyta-Stube?
Yes, thank you. Should council decide to proceed with doing the sound, I'm calling it a sound barrier, but for the 40,000, is that something, should we see it quickly, that could be up and running by the time that we expect film to come back up again, so that we can capitalize on those opportunities when those items are needed right away?
Mayor, Council Abeyta-Stube, we can work with Filmless Cruises as City Council has provided important direction today. The only item that we would need to work is the requirement if the use of the purchase items, it's done by a third entity, that it's not a governmental entity. We will have to set a fair market value for Filmless Cruises to utilize. That would be the only additional item to be explored.
Okay. You know, I am in favor of the soundproofing item, but I do think it's important that if we do that, that we do have it kind of situated right when the opportunity comes and is needed. Mr. Gray, do you have any expanded knowledge on when the talks are to start having productions up and running in New Mexico again? What time frame that they're talking about right now?
I don't think at this moment anybody has a firm answer to that.
Excuse me, Mr. Gray, can you state
Yes.
your name again, please?
Sorry, this is Don Gray from Film Las Cruces. I don't think there's a firm answer to that. I think actually your brother's comment that probably September is probably what most people's target is at this point. I actually, though, I think that the go start moment might actually be a gradual sort of a thing, which we'll start to approve smaller things like commercials with smaller crews and maybe reality television with smaller crews and casts, and then things will kind of ramp up. But they are still, there's a lot of talking going on in the industry right now. I think originally they were talking about maybe midsummer, but that might be overly optimistic. So we're probably at least talking August, September. And to answer your other question about whether with this, the sound abatement is something that we could do rather quickly, I think the answer to that is yes. It's a fairly modest program, modest proposal. And I don't think that there would be a problem bringing it online to the point where somebody would feel very confident in starting production fairly quickly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gray. And thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So Dr. Martinez, can you bring up the slide where I think we were talking about the monies that we have from the hold harmless as well as the state of New Mexico? Okay, so if I understand this correctly, in order to save this state appropriation of approximately $900,000, we would actually have to use that money pretty much immediately and purchase the building. Is that right?
Mayor, the state appropriations right now are frozen, and we would not know on the definite until after the special session.
Okay, yeah, because I think they're going to try to claw back various monies. If we haven't spent it by now, there's a chance we may not have access to that $900,000.
Mayor, based on the conversations that we've had with our grant administrator and her conversations with DFA, because these are state appropriations from past years, they may not be looking at this one, but rather most recent years, although these have been reauthorized for recent years. But the funding was committed in 2015. But ultimately, we would know until after the special session.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay, so that obviously would be a concern. And then so the second thing is working with the community college. Can you go back to those options, I think 2A and 2B? So is Dr. Torres still with us?
Yes.
So Dr. Torres, which is the one that you would prefer the city to work with more, either A or B, 2A or 2B?
Well, I was presenting 2A or 2B.
Mm-hmm.
The 2B, Mayor, oops, let me.
Yeah, that was a little bit too much yellow there. Yeah, we're good. I see it.
The 2B is what we presented. Well, is a slightly different version of what we presented. There are lots of needs that a creative campus is going to have, right? And so we know kind of what our building, what are some of the things that we would typically do in our building, Mayor. But one of the things I want to say is that a workforce training facility, there might be funds out there for a workforce training facility for us to pitch a workforce training facility. And one of the things that I wanted to clarify that I think we were all trying to get at is that the proposal that I was making, or the option that I was presenting, is about digital media more broadly, in that there's lots of professions and lots of industries that need digital media skills. And there are places where film production kind of overlaps with that. And there are other places where it doesn't. There are other ways that digital media, or other industries that digital media So I don't know. I don't know that. I guess that workforce training facility would be what I actually said in my PowerPoint. What that looks like could vary because there are going to be a lot of needs for digital media training, right?
Okay.
And some of that will overlap with film, and some of it won't overlap with film.
Okay, so I don't know if you can answer this or Dr. Martinez. So who came up with option 2A?
Mayor, this was the original conversation that we had up to the Creative Campus charrette, and that was the two, option 1 and 2A were the ones that we had been discussing because of how the monies through resolution have been allocated. The purpose of the money for instance, the city's portion is to create a film studio or an cinematic infrastructure. And so based on the items that we had as adopted by City Council, those were the two options that we explore up to the Creative Campus share right.
Yeah, because I seem to recall, I thought that's what we had talked about a while back was a film studio. And then when the university came into play, talked about working with the CMI. So these are two different scenarios, and then of course the training facility for digital media. Or is this also going to be in the same part of CMI?
Mayor, this would be because of the analysis that we completed for option 2A. That's the option that we went for the RFP to secure investment management and operations. And that seemed to be, at least from the experience we've had, an option that was facing some additional challenges. With 2.B, it will be a lesser amount to be invested. And as Dr. Torres explained or included in her slide, we may have an opportunity to explore additional funds. Right now, the Economic Development Administration has an application open for many different type of eligible applicants, but the City of Las Cruces is one applicant. We can further explore how we can tie job creation and investment to an EDA grant to do some of the additional funding that would go beyond the 3.8 million that we currently have, or the 3 million. For the monies that we have from the city, we would need to change the resolution language to allow for a different facility just beyond a film studio, which is how it is written right now.
So did I hear that we might be able to use that 900,000 from the state towards option 2A?
Mr. Mayor, if the outcome from the special session is that we still have that funding, the language in the state appropriations is for a cinematic infrastructure, correct?
So that's a yes.
Correct.
Okay,
Mr.
so
Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Sword.
Yeah, looking at this again, I misunderstood. I apologize for that. I'm not in favor of option 2B, rather a favor of option 2A instead.
Okay, that's fine. I appreciate that. So, Dr. Torres, so if the council was to do 2A, there's no way to have still some of the students be able to learn in those facilities under that scenario, under 2A? Maybe not to the same degree that you were looking for, but a portion of it?
Right, absolutely. There's no doubt that if a film studio were co-located with CMI, CMT facilities, that there would be some opportunities there for students. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Now, those opportunities would primarily be for film students and perhaps some of the other digital media students. So that would be the difference, is that would primarily be for one group of students that we educate, and not necessarily a range of students that we educate, because digital media just appeals to, there's different sorts of training that happens, much broader set of skills, because those people are going into different professions. But if a film studio was located, there's no doubt that students would benefit from those opportunities, Mayor.
So although you would prefer 2B, as in you could still work with 2A.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I see Senator Steinborn has his hand up. I actually have a question for you, Senator, and then you can kind of incorporate your comments. So if we were to do 2A, you could still maintain your facility there at 2100 Valley? And if so, what would you need from the city?
So, yes, Mayor. Well, I mean, right now, I don't know. I don't see my video. I think I'm probably good to go. Yes, right now, I mean, 2100, we have a lease on 2100. We have a great partnership with DACC. We all agree that until and unless there's a purpose-built studio, which honestly, even if we were to do that, that's several years down the road, that 2100 is the ball game right now for the community. And so we're good on that right now. We do think it's incredibly prudent in interest of creating economic opportunity right now that we do look at the sound treating option. I can tell you, I have spoken to the DFA, and I believe that the film safe. We are looking at doing some capital outlay suites in the session, but as of a few days ago, the studio funding, in fact, no Las Cruces projects were on that sweep list at all. In fact, I think there was only one in Doña Ana County. So that's really great. In fact, I have a budget update here in about an hour. But so yes, 2A is the option. I think Film Las Cruces would prefer, Mayor, because what it does is it continues to pursue partnerships to build that purpose-built facility. I think we need to be leaning on the state hard to help make that happen, as I said earlier, as they've done for other parts of the state. And then I think it just keeps the council's options out there.
So you're okay with 2A then, huh? I thought you wanted 1.
Well, no, Mayor, I want to leave our options open. We very much like the idea. I'm just reading it on my phone here. No, we like the idea. In fact, we've been pushing for a co-located film studio in the academic environment for the beginning, and that's how the Creative Campus came into being. We like that idea. It's just we also think 2100 is still an option that we should not close the door on, because option 2 is going to require a purpose-built new facility that's going to require millions more. And so far, we have not secured that money, whereas we do have the money for option 1 if we were to find a great studio partner. I just think both options still be on the table.
How long is your lease for?
It's a yearly lease.
Annual lease? Okay.
That was just, yes, sir.
Okay. Dr. Martinez and Dr. Torres, so can you go back to the amount the dollar amount again? You had the 3 million from the 2.9. So what if hypothetically we were to put 2.75, 2,750,000, and would we still be able to get those same state appropriations?
Mayor, could you repeat the question?
Okay, you see where the hold harmless GRT is at 2.9 million. Well, 2,946,717.
Yes.
If that was to be changed to 2,750,000, could we still get the state appropriation at those still the same amount, and that total would be roughly $200,000 less?
Yes, Mayor.
You think we could still do that?
The HHGRT funds are city funds, so you as city council have.
Oh yeah, right. No, I got that, but I mean, I guess with the state appropriation, was it based on that exact dollar amount, or if we were to change it a little bit, would they still give it to us? I guess should be my question.
The state appropriations are independent from the funding that the city has.
Oh, it is. Okay. The reason why I was asking, Senator Steinborn, is it that extra 200,000, let's say we removed it from there, we would set it aside to make sure that you had a lease on that in case the community college couldn't continue, because I heard Dr. Torres, but granted, we don't know what the future lies, but this way here would be enough funding for 4 annual leases at 2100 Valley, and keep your operation going over there while we're still working the partnership with the university. Is that something you would consider?
So Mayor and Councilor, okay, I can't start the video, but I've unmuted myself. Okay, the video's good. To be clear, the funding that we got from the state by law can be used only for cinematic infrastructure owned by the city of Las Cruces. It's capital outlay. So I don't believe that it can be used for rent as far as using.
No. Our HHGRT.
Oh, can you use the city funding? I like that.
So let's say we set aside 200,000 of it, right?
Yeah.
To be enough for roughly 4 years of annual leases in case the community college something happens and they're not able to help you, because you said it was 4,500 a month. That comes out to about 50,000 a year, give or take. We set aside 200,000. That's 4 years. By that time, we'll have things developed there at the community college and the sound stage. I think we might be able to be in a better position by then and see how we might be able to transition if need to, either purchase that building or do something else. But it keeps your operation going and gives us the opportunity to move forward with this.
Mr. Mayor, this is David Allahan.
Yes, David.
Before we commit to that, I'll ask staff to pursue that, but I want to remind you that that's HHGRT funds, and I believe that money came out of bond proceeds, so we would need to review the possibility of is leasing property for that purpose an eligible expense under bond proceeds. I can't answer that immediately, but that's something we'll research and we'll report back to the full council.
Okay. Well, leasing it as well, but it also it still enables economic development to occur through the film business. So
yes, sir.
It's not like, so we're ensuring that the film business that's still taking place at 2100 Valley continues, and so that would be my premise. But I appreciate you looking into that.
Mayor, if I can respond.
I'm sorry. Senator, can you state your name, please?
Yes, this is Senator Jeff Steinborn, President of Film Las Cruces. I very much like the idea of recognizing the importance of 2100 and making a long-term commitment if the owner is amenable to that. Having said that, I would also point out that the funding we get for the studio right now is more than just the rent, because Film Las Cruces has to pay for insurance, some other things related to the facility, a little part-time studio coordinator, and all of that funding comes from the community college. Of course, the city's $95,000 a year doesn't pay for any of that. And so just recognize the expenses for the studio are probably $65,000 a year. Also, we would, if the city wanted to set aside some of its hold harmless gross receipts money, to please include a little bit for the sound treating. That's really an important element to help us achieve the success we all want there. The other thing is, I would still ask that if we do this, we don't then say, okay, but we're going to give away the rest of the capital for another type of facility, because we just think that you may end up wanting to go that direction. So I'm not sure if you're saying that we go with like 2B, but we set aside a little money for this. I don't know if that's what you're suggesting, but I wouldn't be crazy about that. But I like what you're bringing up.
No, I think council wants to go with 2A,
right,
as an apple, and move forward with that and still be there to assist you a little bit.
Yeah,
so
that'd be great.
Mayor, if I could say something, this is Monica again.
Of course, yes.
One of the things, obviously we will work with city and we'll Film Las Cruces and with partners as we find them. We're excited about this opportunity. What's so exciting about this discussion is it finally feels like we may be taking we may be taking steps forward to definitively forward to put us in a different place on film and digital production and education. One of the things I'd like to ask the mayor and the council to continue to consider is that as we think about that film is one portion of the tremendous needs that we're going to see for digital production and education over a period of time. And so that as we move forward, we just keep that context in mind, whether we're talking about film facilities, whether we're talking about education facilities, is that the digital needs in our community and across the country are going to be tremendous and are going to require a range of skills to be taught. And so I just want us to keep thinking of that foundation as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we have Mayor Pro Tem Gandara and then Councilor Vasquez have some follow-up questions, comments.
Thank you. I appreciate the option of setting aside, 4-year lease. I was going to recommend that part of that money be for the sound infrastructure that was spoken about via Mr. Gray and Senator Steinborn. I think that's really important. And also one of the things that I discussed is having that report in front of us to be able to determine what other opportunities may exist in terms of spending that money a little bit to enhance that building, just to make it where folks want to come over here. Again, it's one of those things, the chicken and egg, right? And so I think that's certainly important. And I would look to Senator Steinborn and Mr. Gray to let us know what other things, improvements might be necessary in order to entice people, the industry, to come to Las Cruces. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Everyone knows that the chicken came first. Councilor Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to everybody who is continuing this thoughtful discussion. I don't have any further questions other than to say that I strongly support option 2B. I don't support option 2A, and I would need more information, I think, as Councilor Gandara said, about the condition and potential of that facility over a 2-year term to commit to such a large investment in the rent of that particular building. So I just wanted to say that as we wrap up the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Sword, Councilor Abeta-Stube.
Yeah, in response to Councilor Vasquez, I would like to ask President Torres if she was free of paying that $40,000-$50,000 a year rent on the 2100 Valley building. Could she put that money towards media, the digital media education?
Thank you, Mayor.
In other words, option B2 or 2B.
Thank you,
2B.
Mayor, Councilor Short. We are not. We did not have any plans to stop supporting 2100. That was still kind of in our short-term plan, depending on where we go. And so, would it be possible to reallocate those dollars somewhere else in terms of other digital media needs? Sure, we would certainly consider that.
So, in other words, we could do both 2B and 2A if those monies were available. The rent money.
We would be able to think about how we wanted to reallocate that, because it wasn't like we were going to eat that back anytime soon, right?
Okay. So we can do it all. It looks like we can do it all. That's what I'm gathering.
Mayor,
we need to do it all too.
Councilor Sword, I don't know if we can do it all, but Dr. Martinez, do you have a comment you'd like to say?
Yes, Mayor. Thank you very much, and thanks to all of you, because you're very excited about the opportunities and you see the long-term benefits. Unfortunately, we would want to have a lot of money to support all the initiatives. Unfortunately, we are constrained with the 3.8 for us to define the next steps. And so one item that I want to remind you is for option 2. Well, actually, option 1, if we were to purchase the Coca-Cola building, we would still need to retrofit it. And then for option 2A, we would still need an investment of about 8 million plus someone to manage and operate. The same would apply. Well, the management and operation would also apply for the acquisition of 2100. The 2B would be the least costly in terms of new construction, and we could potentially look at this grant that I mentioned before if we're able to frame it as a direct job creating opportunity for the community and as a resiliency response to the current situation for career pathways.
Well, thank you for that clarification, Dr. Martinez. Unfortunately, I took the position that those investors were still around, so they never came through. The ones that initially had responded to this.
Mayor, the investors were interested, however, because they did not have the knowledge or connections to the film industry, it would have meant for them to build a building with no one to securely or committed to use it. So that's primarily the reason why the investment did not go through.
I see. Okay, well, thank you for that. Changes a lot. Changes the whole spectrum here. Councilor Abeyta-Stube?
Yes, no, I was just going to ask for some clarification on if we'll be able to see those performance-based measures for FLC before we make any final decisions.
I'm sorry, Councilor. Can you repeat what you just said, please? I apologize.
No problem. I was going to ask if we were going to see that yearly update for Film Las Cruces before we make any final decisions on this project. The performance-based measured update.
Oh, I see.
Mayor, Councilor Abeyta-Stube, this is your call, and if you rather pause the decision until you hear that presentation, in the meantime, we can send you the contract with the deliverables for your review and analysis.
Okay, thank you. I personally would like to see the review, but I'll leave the decision to the council as a whole, but I just think it's something we might want to consider.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Who's trying to speak? Is that
Sorry,
Barbara?
it's Barbara DeLeon, Mayor.
Oh, okay. Yes, Barbara.
I wanted to interject and clarify that since this is a work session, there will not be a decision at this meeting. It's information sharing, and we can certainly provide you whatever information you request during this session at a later date so that we can come forward with something for you to decide on.
Okay, Barbara, sure. Thank you for that. And but usually I like to get some sense of direction so staff can start working on it. But I appreciate that. Councilor Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I too, I think that the options we have right now are the chicken, the egg thing, you know, it's like, but anyway, I'm aligned with Councilor Abeyta-Stube on this. My thought, because Mandy Gus quite a while ago said that because there was a question about tracking and Mandy's response to Abeyta-Stube's question was that as of March, Film Las Cruces is fine, that there's a monthly report, and that it was okay, that it met the expectations. So I too would feel a lot better about proceeding with this, because there have been so many questions, and I don't doubt that there's been a lot of work. And then we've been at today's session, we've been hit with, we're talking about chicken and the egg. I'm talking about apples and oranges. We're talking about these different options that somehow they're not totally incongruous, but they're somewhat, it seems like we could go into the CMI thing with the DACC, or DACC could probably do that independently. I don't know. But I would feel a lot more comfortable if we had that, if we took a look at a full presentation by the Economic Development Department insofar as the tracking. And because I think that Film Las Cruces has been around now for, 6 years? And in the 2 years I've been on council, I've been hearing the same thing. And so I would just like some, somehow some clarification and some clarity. Well, clarification, clarity. I would like to have, I would like to see another report. I would feel more comfortable moving forward with this. Of course, we're not voting on it today, but I would like to see that. Thank you.
Okay, so Dr. Torres, on option 2B, this workforce training facility, do you have and you may have said this, I'm sorry, but approximately what would be the size of the facility?
Mayor and council members, I didn't have a specific notion there, but let me talk a little bit about what the idea is. I think that Councilor Flores just said, well, DACC could build. There's no doubt that we could build the building that we've got funding for on our own, right? We could do that. The beauty of this sort of project is I think we go from having a building that can serve a function, right? That would serve a function the way all of our buildings serve functions in terms of providing learning opportunities for students and people in our community. It could do that. What I love about this project is the idea that we actually gain from working together. So we go from a good project that meets its need to potentially a spectacular project that drives not just workforce development in terms of the training, but economic development in terms of who we can attract to the community. So that's kind of the beauty of doing this together, of working collectively on this. I can tell you that the square footage that we're talking about for this, the DACC facility is about 15,000 square feet is what we're doing. So if we were to build a second facility, it would actually depend on, what if we did a post-production facility? What if we did a sound stage? We would develop that kind of collectively as we're working on the planning. But I can tell you that just for comparison's sake, the building that we're thinking about on the DACC side is 15,000 square feet, which if you've been in the building at East Mesa, that's what approximately the size of the CMT building at East Mesa. So I don't have a specific answer for you, Mayor, but that does provide a little bit of a context of what it might look like.
So you have do you have the land already secured then?
I believe that the land is secured through Arrowhead Park. And okay. Dr. Martinez could probably speak to that. She's probably more familiar with those conversations than I've been, but I believe so, yes.
Okay, and let me just ask Senator Steinborn real quick. Senator, so what if we were to build, hypothetically, a new facility? About how many square feet would we need? And about how many square foot would we need for that?
Well, if you're talking about the traditional film industry, you're going to need at least close to 40,000 square feet. And you really, that's so important for the council to understand. And it was something we had to come to understand when we got into this economic development, that what the industry needs. And usually what they're used to is a 15 to 20,000 foot stage. Again, you need about 5 to 10,000 square feet of office space. You need a production mill that's up to 5,000 square feet, not to mention craft services, parking, loading docks. So just to be clear, a 15,000 square foot building isn't going to accommodate film production. So if you're talking about putting your money into something, whatever you put your money into, if you're trying to accommodate that industry, just understand that that's the scale you need to be operating for to accommodate a small or medium-sized show, not even a large show or multiple shows. That's kind of a starter package, Mayor, is you're going to need 40,000 square feet at least. I think when we worked with a city architect years ago and designed a facility, I think, I don't know, the number that comes out of my head was 45,000 square feet was the minimal plan that they had come up with. That was under former manager Garza. They hired an architect and looked at that. And then 2100 came into vision kind of at the end of that. So with all due respect to the community college proposal, I would love to work with the president, and that might be an alternative, to see if there's a way how we could meld that plan, because I think we would all love to do the digital media. But if we want to have all options and say that, it has to be scaled to the right size.
Sure. Dr. Torres, couple more questions, please. So if we were to do this 3.8 million, you think that's enough to build your facility?
No, I don't. I do not, Mayor and Council. No, it's not. We would have to pursue other funds. There's no doubt about it.
And Mayor, this Griselda Martinez again. Just for clarifications, for option 2A, we would be looking at a film studio. For option 2B, it's a workforce training facility. So the sizes would be different because the purposes would be different as well. But I believe that it would be it would not require the same size as a film studio would require.
Okay, I got you. Thank you for that. But Dr. Torres, so can you just give me a ballpark of what you think your facility would run if you were to do it standalone by yourself?
Do you mean how much it would cost?
Right. The workforce training facility.
Oh, if we again, and Senator Steinborn's right, we could, the collaboration will yield other things. But if we're talking about a workforce training facility for digital media that would allow for kind of a range of kind of the industries to be served, right, and a range of the skills to be taught, and not just film. A 15,000 square foot building, we could do a lot with a 15,000 square foot building. That would allow us to kind of expand spaces that we could use, that CMI could use, that industry partners could use. But that's a guess, Mayor. I know that we can do a lot with a 15,000 square foot building. And again, this would be digital media and not necessarily film. If it would allow us to expand some of those industries and some of those things that we do. But again, not the film side of digital media. It would be other sorts of industries and that we would be serving.
Do you have an approximate amount that you have set aside for debt service if we were to move forward with this that you know for sure that you have?
You know what? Councilor Gondota, it's 15,000. 15 is the building. She had asked a question. You know what? I'm sure we do, Mayor. I do not know that offhand, but yes, we do. But I can get that information.
And this would be in addition to the 4,500 that you give Film Las Cruces.
We give Film Las Cruces. Senator Steinborn, correct me. I think Senator Steinborn, we're close to 60,000, right? I think is what we offer.
4,500.
Yes, this would be an addition. Now, this second building, when we talk about option 2, that would really be in collaboration. So that's something that would have to be collectively discussed and figure out how we're going to do that, Mayor, because we all have kind of constraints on us in terms of how we bill. So for example, there's some of your money that you have to own. One of the issues that we face is we go to capital outlay with New Mexico Higher Education Department. And one of the issues we wrestle with is how much square footage an institution of higher ed has. And so we're seeing as option 2, the B would be really a collaboration that we would need to work out, but it would serve as a training facility for the kinds of industry needs that we have, and we would be a partner in that. How that would be worked out we would have to discuss that.
So let me just share with council what I've been kind of putting in my head here. One, I would like for us to maybe look at another work session where we theoretically look at this workforce training facility, which if it's at $4 million, and if we can build a film studio for say 6 brand new, so that's 10, all right? Let's just say 10. I'm just going to use that for example. With money as cheap as it is today, we could probably, the university could probably bond that out for probably in the neighborhood of $35,000 a month to build that complete. So you back out the $4,000 that they will save in rent, and I'm just putting aside $10,000 that the university would be putting up. If we were to come up with $14,000 of ourselves, we would do a transfer. That's $168,000 a year. That would go almost 16 years, and we wouldn't have to put over that $2.8 million. I think what I'm trying to say is I would really like to see us have another work session where we actually look at building both using these monies. And instead of us coming up with this $2.8 million at one time, we'll just do every year a transfer to the university or the college of $170,000, which would be our portion of the debt service for many years to come. And you'd have a brand new building. You'd have both, kind of like what Councilor Sorg was talking about, do everything. And that really does do everything. I mean, right now, interest is so cheap. Money is so cheap, and if we can take advantage of it, it's like something to really look at, I think. So looks like we have was it Councilor Beta-Stubbe? Did you have another question, or did you forget to put your hand down?
Sorry, I forgot to put my hand down.
And Councilor Flores, you forget to put your hand down, or did you have another question?
No, I didn't forget to put my hand down. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that it isn't so much that Jeff Steinborn and Dr. Monica Torres aren't on the same page, but it looks like they have different interests in this work session today. And I said apples and oranges, and it's pretty much that in the way I'm perceiving all of this and, the conversations that we're having. So, because you look at option 1, it's an acquisition. And then we started talking about, and then Don Gray said, well, it's going to cost $30,000, $40,000 to do the sound treatment. And so, all these bits of information, and I'm not sure how all of it is connected. I don't understand. I don't know if Dr. Torres has been having conversations with either Don or John Foley or Jeff Steinborn, or maybe with the Workforce Solutions or with the Bridge. Because I'm just wondering how all of this is. And I just don't see it. I just don't see us making a decision that would involve all these movable parts here. There are a number of movable parts, and I just don't see how. And Jeff has made it clear, Senator Steinborn has made it clear that no, option 2 is totally different. We're talking about film, and Dr. Torres has made it clear, no, we're just talking about digital media. So, so it's not a question of, I just don't see how the twain have met here. And perhaps Dr. Martinez could explain it to me. If you would, please, I'd really appreciate that.
Yes, Mayor, Councilor Flores, thank you for your question. I believe that the common theme here is developing a cluster, an economic cluster that has different elements to it. The digital media cluster, for instance, is composed of Ganymede, and the CMI, the Creative Media Institute, and the Creative Media Technology, and the facilities at 2100 South Valley, and Workforce Solutions and Workforce Connections. We're actually currently working with them to see what type of trainings we can expand upon in partnership with the city. And digital media, it's one of the areas that we are exploring. Digital media is also a prior or sector that is a targeted sector for the city within our contract with Mavita. For the state, it's a priority for the state. As I mentioned, the incentives available for film also expand to other sectors or other areas in the digital media, including gaming. For instance, Ganymede, when they produce their games, they can utilize that to leverage upon the incentives that the state has for film. And so I think in the bigger picture, I agree with you that we've been talking about very specific elements, but all of them, the overarching theme is the digital media cluster in our region.
Okay, so given that, thank you so much, Dr. Martinez. I partially understand it. I understand the goal of what Dr. Torres would like to see, and I couldn't agree more. We need jobs. We need our youth or our potential workforce, be it youth, be it new entries, re-entries, because of the shift we're having all around in our economic system here in the U.S. and probably throughout the world because of COVID. But today we're either not that we're making a decision today, as Ms. DeLeon pointed out, but today we're still pondering these issues. And the issue is, it seems that if we go with option 1, option 2 is totally wiped out. If we go with option 2B, option 1 is totally wiped out. So they kind of cancel each other. So, so I still, I still don't see, because option 1 is pretty much a status quo. It would be the currently leased to DACC, managed by FLC, and then potential lead up, yada, yada. So I'm still to me, it's a quandary. I understand exactly what you explained, but I think that the options definitely cancel out each other. It isn't as if it's there's a melding somewhere, but oh well, that's the way my brain works. Thank you very much, Dr. Martinez. I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Mayor, may I make one more comment?
I'm sorry, is this?
This
Dr.
is Monica.
Torres? Okay, yes.
Mayor and members of the council, one of the things I wanted to say, and I think maybe it goes back to something that Councilor Sorg said and the mayor said, is like, we want it all. Could we do everything? And I think that the original planning for the Creative Campus, I think we've been talking about it for a long time, and part of why I'm presenting this is it feels like we're starting to ramp up to move in this direction. But one of the things that would be fabulous is if we could do all parts of the creative campus. You know, we come together and we say, this is what we want this to look like. That would be preferable, right? That would be ideal. We could build the creative campus all at one time. I think one of the issues we're wrestling with is that we will do this in phases. What do we have funding for? What's the big plan? What do we have funding for now? What do we have funding for next? What do we have funding for next? What do we have funding for next? And so I think part of the issue here is we are very interested in a workforce training facility in digital media, but we also know that the chicken and the egg, whichever one the film studio is, we also know that we need that to drive economic development in the county. And so I guess part of the issue here is that we don't have money for everything. If we did, I think we could put a plan together that where it would all come together and where the pieces would fit nicely together. But the fact is that we're going to have to phase because it's a big project. It could ultimately be a spectacular project for this community, and it will take investment.
Thank you. Senator Steinborn, you had a comment? Senator Steinborn, Jeff?
I'm here, Mayor. Bear with. Sorry, Mayor, so much has been said. I'm not sure. I just want to be really clear. The money that was appropriated from the state, the $980,000, was for entertainment arts, which certainly includes digital, for commercial production. So the spirit in which that funding was raised by myself and my colleagues was to generate commercial activity. And yes, you can use that jointly for workforce development, but that's a different nature from the spirit in which myself and my colleagues appropriated money. So that's important to note. I also want to just say, though, Mayor, going back, and of course, because you were there the whole time, the film community worked incredibly hard to not only raise that $1 million over 2 sessions, but to go to the council repeatedly to then lead to your commitment to $3 million for the film industry. Not to not include the digital gaming world and the digital entertainment world, because again, we worked with Dr. Boberg, going back to the beginning, to come up with this idea of a creative campus where all these worlds came together, and we helped champion that idea. But I just want to tip my hat to the film community, because what's being proposed here today is to basically take the money and take their years of effort to raise that money. And I think we need to be nimble, certainly, and spend the money wisely, which is why it hasn't been spent today. We're prominent in that. But I think what I would advocate for is that we don't go that route. And instead, what we do is we work together to see how we can achieve both the new digital gaming. We try to embrace the existing $500 million film industry that exists in the state. That there is a $100 million a year film incentive to support. So I just want to say those thoughts for your consideration. That's why we're partial to option 2A, because it kind of includes both visions. Thanks.
Well, Senator Steinborn, I mean, what did you think about having another work session where we actually combine 2A and 2B? And if we were to, that way there, we just get it done. And, that way there, the funding source, this 2.8 million that we have, or that the city has, in conjunction with the university or the community college, will pay that debt service off in 16, 17 years. And instead of it just, putting it towards one of these, I think we can actually do 2. I know that I go real fast when I put these things together. I guess what I'm going to ask my colleagues is, let me work with, let's not move on anything other than come back to another work session, but basically we're going to look at what it would take to have 2A and 2B on this campus, whether it's 10 million or 15 million, what the debt service is, what we think that the community college will pay and what we can pay, and we won't even have to cough up that $2.8 million. We'll just use that for annual payments to the university for the debt service. And then you'll have a new facility. There'll be a new film studio and the training facility. That'd be one of a kind. But I'm just, like I said, money is so cheap right now it's ridiculous to, if we can borrow what 10 million or 15 million at literally nothing. Why not do it, get that secured, and have this facility here? Whereas normally if this had been 3 years ago, we wouldn't be able to touch it doing it this way. But in light of the lending industry, I think we can. Is what I'm trying to get at. We won't make any decisions, but let us come back with this hybrid option where it's actually both put together.
Mayor, that sounds great to me. Yes, sir.
And then set some money aside for you for probably 4 years, because that's about how long it's going to take.
Yeah. I like that idea, Mayor. I would just throw in 2 caveats that I don't hope aren't lost. And that's number one, I would encourage you and the staff and everybody to really lean on the state to help recruit a content producer to Las Cruces in the same way Netflix and NBC Universal. There's rumors of another big content producer that might be coming to the state, which you could expect to be another Albuquerque situation with lots of LEDA dollars. We have the money that you are putting up is a quite an attractive piece of bait to the film industry and to that content industry to come to Las Cruces. And so we ought to be trying to leverage the money you're talking about to get the state to play a role. And number 2, and I think, by the way, we need that partnership to make the commercial side of the studio successful. So I would hope that you would continue to urge your economic development department to be aggressive in that pursuit. The second thing is if we could get some support from the staff on chasing down the sound treating, that would be a big deal in the short run so that we could get more work here. Thanks.
Okay. Councilor Sword?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Senator and President Torres and all for hammering this out. This has gotten a lot more complex than I remember. Yeah, and this training facility is so new here. I'm not even sure what it means, but I'm willing to have us explore it for sure. My question for President Torres, now you just passed a bond issue, so this training facility for digital media is not part of that bond, is that correct? Sorry to put words in your mouth, but.
No, Mayor and Councilor, actually there is a building that CMT is planning to build on this property that is separate from this kind of second facility. Okay. We are definitely planning to put, and that's what the bond has paid for. But okay. This was a second facility where we were looking to see, could we find additional funding to try and spin out the campus a little bit more.
I see. So if the building is for CMT and this with digital media would be something extra.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get clear.
Thank you.
So yes, good. That's a good idea. So I like what the mayor is talking about. This could be work. I think what we need to concentrate on, I'm not saying we haven't, but we need to find a manager and operator for this whole operation. And so I hope Don Gray can help us out with that, but somebody anyway, so we can find somebody that operates it and manages it and keeps it running and so forth. That's what my little 2 cents worth put in. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have, right?
Thank you, Councilor. Did you have another comment, Councilor Flores? Oh, you took your hand down. Okay, so since we're not acting on this or moving on this, all I would like to do, all I'm going to need is to get from Dr. Torres how much of a set aside that the university would have for this facility, this workforce training facility. And then we can get a quote from our bond counsel as to how much our debt service would be. I don't know who you all use. You might use the same one. I have no idea. RBC Capital, but just to get an idea of how much it would cost and then bring it back to council. And we'll just kind of continue this part and show where if we had both facilities on the campus, I really think it's something that's at least worth looking into, because it'd be a new facility, new soundstage with whatever would be needed. And then this workforce training facility, my goodness, you could go back and forth. I think that would probably be the only one in the state to have both a film studio and a training facility in the same building. So if that's okay with council, if we could kind of look at that and just run those numbers. Senator Steinborn, did you have another question, or did you have a?
Sorry, no, I'm good, Mayor. I've spoken my piece. Thanks.
Okay, Councilor Flores, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that I just want to say again that I would like to see that report that the Economic Development Department, the reports that Mandy Gus made reference to. Thank you.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, how about if we bring that back when we have another work session on this? Would that be okay?
Well, that would be fine. It would be because I think they're monthly. So, right?
Okay. Yeah. Well,
but
I don't know.
Whichever comes first. Thank you.
I'm sure they can send it to you. Councilor Vasquez?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think I'm okay with moving forward with the work session, but also just want to, after hearing the discussion, personally, I feel like workforce development is a commercial use. It will lead to jobs. It will lead to economic activity. It will come from folks that attend our university and spend local dollars on their education here. And it's actually something tangible that could happen in the next year or 2 or 3, something that's really solid that we can hold on to, that's not based on speculation or what the market will do or what the state potentially will or won't do. It's something we have available to us, and with a awesome willing partner in DACC. So do support moving forward with the work session, but wanted to make that point because investing in our young folks in this industry is something we can do now that doesn't require the potential or spec investments of others. So want to make sure that that's strongly considered. So thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, Dr. Torres, is that something that you'd be okay with? We have another work session, but at this work session, we may actually be able to do both the training facility and a film studio.
Yes, of course, Mayor.
But can you work on getting for me the one? I think you said it's about 60,000 that you give to Film Las Cruces, which theoretically, if we do this large facility, and I would envision it to be separated. One part would be the training facility, and then the other part would be the film studio. So I think we could still use that money that Senator Steinborn and others helped raise. But we would need that debt service that the community college would be willing to have paid on the digital side for the training facility only. And when we add those two together, that and then the rent, and then we'll see on our side what it would cost to build the sound stage, and then we put it together, take that total amount, get a price quote as to what the cost of funds would be from our bond people, and bring that back for the second work session. And then at that time, we'll be able to really just focus on either 2A or 2B, and possibly 1. But I'm confident that with the price of money, as cheap as it is, I mean, I bet you there's discussion that we may be able to get it for 0.5% interest. That's unheard of. That's our debt service would be for 10 million, like $25,000 a month. That's nothing. That's something, but it's nothing. 4,000 in rent, and if you guys already had 10,000 budgeted, that's all we need to give you is 10,000 a month. That's nothing. We can do that pretty easy, or 120,000 a year.
I will work on that, Mayor.
Okay, great. And I'll get with you, Dr. Martinez, to kind of, like I said, I know I talk real fast on this stuff. It just, unfortunately, it just flows through my head real quick. But I'll put it down on paper for you and then Senator Steinborn and Dr. Torres. But I think we can actually accomplish both of these right now, this time in history, because of the money is so cheap. It never has been this cheap ever. So. Okay, well, I guess that's it. This is the only thing we have on this work session, correct? Okay, I believe so. So I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Who moved?
Councillor Abeta-Stube.
Okay, Councillor Abeta-Stube. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Councillor Sorg that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we're adjourned. It's 4:01 p.m. We need a few minutes to switch over and then we'll go to our special city council meeting.